Is Nikolaios. I'm a political scientist, professor for political science at the University of Fribourg in Switzerland, and here is I'm coming with my team here. This is Denis Daflon, the coordinator of a program called ASEN, which is about social science promotion in Southern Caucasus. And Daniel was also preparing a PhD on specific aspects of transformation process in Georgia. Here are my assistants, Tamara Brunner, who is also a political scientist, and Magdalena Solska, political scientist and lecturer in political science at University of Fribourg. So we are all here because we have as you have seen, in some ideas about how we could use this event as a starting point for interesting cooperation. So let me just say how everything started. You know, with our friend Victor Stepanenko, we met, you remember, last year in Odessa. Nobody thought that at that time that so dramatic events would happen a couple of months later. At that time we were discussing about the project together with our Georgian friends on different aspects of protest in our countries. Unfortunately, this project, because this, you know, it was a competition, you know, this project could not be funded, you know. And then Maidan happened, you know, and then we had the idea, you know, there are some publications also in German language about Maidan and Euromaidan, but most of them are very impressionistic, you know. I mean, I just circulate them and just show you them. And what we had in mind is really to ask social scientists about how they are looking at the events. That was again. I was discussing with Victor. It would be a wonderful thing, and we have this forum. This forum has the advantage, and I give the floor also to Victor afterwards. That it is. I know there are a couple of thousand copies circulating of that in German in Switzerland, and we also sometimes we're also publishing an English version. And this, if you see on the back of this. You can see that the whole thing here is also funded by our program. And as I say, it would be a wonderful idea to start our cooperation with first-hand analysis and impressions of Maidan, but through the looking glass, through the lenses of social sciences, because this is really something interesting, and I consider that just as a starting point to discuss also about a book project and about other things. Yeah. Maybe Victor, you could also add a couple of things on that.
I can
just a moment, because we plan some public activities in the future. Maybe I will ask Victor to sit here. Okay. It takes only 1 second and speak on the camera.
Okay, great. Okay. No problem. No
this is just logistical.
Yeah.
Because we are a small group, we can do
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
I'll just thank you, Nicholas, and just maybe I add a couple of words on idea and how it was arranged. As I remember, the first idea came in February about possibility to arrange a special issue on Maidan and Euro Revolution, and the events were so quick and speed that, for example, my text, I just prepared text on Maidan itself, on its self-regulation, on civil society issues, as a reflection in Euromaidan. But in 2 months, actually, from the time everything just finished, it's about February, and nobody expected such a quick dynamics of events. And I'm really grateful that from time of the idea, when the idea was pushed and to time for results, it's fantastic speed actually. And we, to my mind, we got very successful result, and it's really important not only for our community, because for us it's also occasion to meet together, because major of people who involved and contributed to this volume, to this issue, I know personally. And it was also relation of trust, you know. I trust people, and just we distributed all this information. I'm really grateful for people, for my colleagues who responded positively and made their contribution. Idea was actually to cover different aspects of Euro revolution in Ukraine, including regional aspect. We have a couple of people from Ukrainian region, Ofra Yuri Shveda from Lviv. This is Western Ukrainian perspective, and also we have our colleague Alexander Fisun, who is from Kharkiv. So he presented Eastern Ukrainian perspective, and also there was idea to invite one colleague from Crimea called Tatiana Senyushkina, but because of this kind of dramatic events in Crimea, I don't know the reasons, but she somehow didn't respond to the invitation to be involved. But actually it would be nice also to reflect all this upheaval and process, controversial process from Crimean perspective as well. So and also different dimension includes not only regional profiles, but we try to make contribution from different disciplines, also including politological, sociological, geopolitical aspect, and others. So to my mind, we got very successful result, and it's great. Which this is one of the first. I maybe would not be overestimated, but it's first more or less solid and professional expertise on Ukrainian events, and we are glad that it's have quite a good circulation, because I believe that editorial board has its own websites, and people could read it from webs, and also we'll try to circulate as much as possible copies here in Ukraine to get some response and maybe reaction. And I hope, as Nicholas already told, that this is only initial point, because the story is not complete. The story is not complete, and we are witnessing how the process and events goes quickly and very dramatically. Nobody would expect war. Actually, this is war in eastern border of Ukraine. And nobody would expect, for example, in January and in February, which Crimea would be annexed by Russia. So there are a lot of story and a lot of dynamics in this process. And now we have yesterday Poroshenko signed agreement on EU economical association. So I believe that Ukraine now is a country which is a really hot point and hot strategy, not only for Europe, but for globe as well. And we made a very important and actual contribution, which was significant, goes far behind of European borders, definitely. So what's my point? Maybe it's also really interesting what I found, which it only takes 3 hours from Zurich to Kiev, which hopefully this symbolic short distance means not only possibilities of our close cooperation, but also a good perspective for Ukraine to be involved in more close way with European partners, particularly with our Swiss partners, who really appeared very effective and supportive team. Thank you, Nicholas, for your efforts, and thank you for all efforts of your colleagues who put a lot of energy in this result, actually. And I believe that all of us and contributors are happy and really and grateful for our mutual efforts and interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Yeah, maybe we could continue now also to give the floor to the other colleagues, or to give a first-hand impression. Who would like to start?
I'll open the discussion perhaps on the part of the... I play kind of a dual role here in the sense that I have one foot in Switzerland, of course, and an interest in Ukraine that's also on the family, historical, and personal level. I would like to just follow up on what you said, Victor. That's true. I believe that Switzerland does have a unique role that it can play in contributing to the betterment and reform, betterment of society and reform in Ukraine. Of course, there is a great respect for Switzerland on many different levels and among different people. It's maybe one of the few things that people who disagree about agree about. So I think this is a positive point. With regards to the publication, I too think that this is a fantastic opening sort of enticement into taking it to another level. In my opinion, what we spoke about earlier is this really did come together very quickly. We have some very high caliber participants who took part in the publication. Thanks to you, Nicolas, that we were able to put this out in a very good way, in a very quick way. The results are tangible. The results are something I think everybody here can be proud of. And I'm hopeful that this will be not just a good booklet of documents, but also this will be just the beginning of the foundation of building on and continuing. So I think there's a lot of potential in Ukraine, and I think we've spoken about this for years. It was always the joke that Ukraine is the country that never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity, right? And I think that in this case now, with the third revolution, like Mykola Repchuk and I wrote about it in the opening to Ukraine on its meandering path between East and West, I think this is now coming, this is the third revolution. This is like the biblical tale, when finally there's a real change, there's a change of generation, a change of people at the top, and I'm hopeful that this will be the one. That this will allow Ukraine to develop in the way that it should develop, because it's been stymied for too long, and the human potential, the intellectual potential in Ukraine, in my opinion, is too important. Like Saakashvili said, it's not just a question about Ukraine, it's not just about a question about Europe. It is really a question about world order. It's a question about whether is this the kind of world we would like to be in today, with the lack of respect of international law and order. And I personally do not want to go into that new paradigm, this new reality, right? I think we really need to solidify our resources and try to show an example, which is exactly that which Putin fears, is that if Ukraine becomes a transparent democratic society, this will be the catalyst for him to be overthrown in Russia. So I think there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of realism involved here. And the realism is walking on the street and seeing that these courageous people who risk their lives, who are still, some of them standing there. I was speaking to others in the group thinking that I can't imagine any other country that I know well in the world where this could have taken place. Certainly not in Switzerland in today's day and age, certainly not in the United States. I think it's very admirable and it's very respectful that what these people have been able to accomplish in a short time. Let's just hope that this is not again just a changing of the band, you know, a new band comes in and starts playing the same tune. So that's what we're hoping that we're able to accomplish, and with this and future publications, maybe conferences, to bring together these sources. And it's also, I think, for many Swiss people, it's something that is, you know, it's a great tale. It really is. It is a fantastic tale. If we were to, like you said, nobody expected this last year. If you'd put out a movie saying this is going to be Ukraine in 2014, nobody would have believed it. But it's happened, and we're here. So let's use this to continue with moving forward.
I forgot to add that, because this is maybe the effect of yesterday evening's party, that Andrei Rushnitsky is also part of our, in fact, also the large part of our larger team. You know, is also in our institute and helped us a lot also with, building up good contacts here with Ukraine, and we have already long cooperation, you know, a couple of years. And we have quoted also our first book, you know, where we're under Orange Revolution, where Alexei also was a part of that. You remember Alexei? In two books. All of these books were unfortunately a bit too optimistic with regard to. No, I mean, the first one was a bit too optimistic, you know, after the Orange Revolution, and then maybe today we have more reasons to hope. Yeah, maybe Alexei. Maybe can I give the floor to you, Alexei?
Well, if you remember that first book, I think what we have written for that book was actually about Russian-Ukrainian relations on the eve of the Orange Revolution. So it wasn't too optimistic, but it gave the background of what could happen. Okay, anyway. Well, I think as we are talking now about the project which is conducted in Switzerland, and you're going to continue the project, it's important to explain to Western and European audience some important things and some basic things which are misinterpreted by Kremlin propaganda. Because you know that Kremlin is trying to impose the idea of federalization on Ukraine. The idea of having several state languages. Okay, the idea of neutrality. And I believe personally it's very important that we explain the difference. And usually, you know, Swiss experience is presented. Look, how good is it, you know, to have federal system, to have several state languages, to have referendums at basic level, to be a neutral country for so long. So I think it would be very important if in your publications from your side there would be explanation of the difference between Ukraine and an explanation to European audience, because you would be trusted on that. So it's important again to explain to the European audience what are the differences. That's based, and you know the differences, so I think I shouldn't remind you about that, but this is really important, because sometimes even analysts or professors, or especially journalists who are not specialists in Ukraine, they are very, thinking very schematically. There is pro-Western Ukraine, there is pro-Russian Ukraine, there is Ukrainian-speaking Ukraine, Russian-speaking Ukraine, so the country could split, the country should be federalized, so we need to provide more background in order to explain what does it mean, what are the differences, and always stress the fact that Ukrainians can find compromises. We can find compromises, and all the history of modern Ukraine actually has shown that we are able to find compromises at the most tense and dramatic moments of our life, but without foreign interference. I mean here, Russian interference. What else should I say? about there is also, you know, it's good that you have section on far right, and I believe it's also important to explain to Europeans, because usually the image of Ukrainian far right is exaggerated by Russian propaganda, and because of that also in the Western media, because journalists are interested in sensations, you know, so if they're talking, they would like to talk about the right sector, but the right sector was actually, the role of the right sector was extremely and deliberately exaggerated during Maidan, and I believe it's very important to, there are figures that, you know, the right sector, the candidate of the right sector received in presidential elections 1%, Technobok from Svoboda, which was considered as far right, now they're moving, you know, they're evolving, it's also important to understand. He received 1.5%, so combined it's 2.5%. Compare it with the results of the far right during the elections to the European Parliament. So where is the threat? So I believe it's very important, you know, to explain these things also to European audience. The third point is that Ukrainian nationalism is, and modern Ukrainian nationalism is inclusive. It's based on territory. It's not based on ethnicity. Ethnicity is important, but as we have seen during Maidan, that it embraced a lot of Russian speakers. It embraced a lot of Jews, representatives of other minorities. So again, this is not the main factor. Language issue, you know, is a very tricky issue, very sensitive issue, but actually when we are talking about Ukraine, to be Ukrainian doesn't mean, you know, we embrace all those who believe in this country, and it's important again to understand that most people of self-defense battalions in Donbass who are fighting for Ukraine, they are Russian speakers. And they are saying in Russian, we are against Putin, and we are going to fight for our country. And they are speaking that in the Russian language. So that's the interesting thing. Now, as to the optimism about the future, I think that basically the trend is positive. And definitely it would be more positive, and I would be more optimistic if there would be no Russian intervention. Again, we need clearly explain to European audience, to Germans, to French, to Spanish, that Putin is aggressive. Full stop. And we need to state very clearly and not go, because we are scientists, so we can say things which diplomats sometimes do not like to say. We need to remind that what happened in Crimea is the first case of annexation in after World War II. The first case, you know, you have the example of Northern Cyprus, but Northern Cyprus wasn't annexed. Okay? You have Kosovo, but Kosovo wasn't annexed. You have Transnistria, Abkhazia, but they were not annexed. And this is the very case of annexation. And Russia is waging undeclared war in the east of Ukraine. Again, Russian propaganda would try to portray it as civil war between Ukrainians, civil conflict between Ukrainians, which is not true. Again, it's very important to explain to European audience. And finally, as to the optimism, I would be cautious, but cautious optimist. So the situation is, again, we are on the right track. I think we had legitimate and free elections. The president was elected in the first round by overwhelming majority in all the regions of Ukraine. You know, even half of Lugansk Oblast voted. Where you have a conflict. So we signed association agreement, but definitely there's a lot of things to do, especially we need anti-corruption reform, we need judicial reform, we need police reform, and in order to do that, we also need early parliamentary elections. We need early parliamentary elections. Definitely, these early parliamentary elections would play into the hands of Mr. Poroshenko. So he would love to do that. Some other parties may not like it so much, but I still think, despite what Poroshenko thinks, that it would play into his hand because it would increase his representation in the parliament. Nevertheless, we need to do these early parliamentary elections because this is demand from society, and in the present parliament you do not have overwhelming majority for reform, and we need to create this majority for reform. So we need these early parliamentary elections. The question is how to combine it with painful economic reforms, how to combine it with resisting Russian aggression. So again, we are not in, say, ideal situation. I believe to a certain extent it was easier to do it in Poland, in the Czech Republic, because they didn't face Russian aggression, you know. So that's the things that we need to take into account. Well, maybe basically that's what I would like to stress. And it's also important, again, it's when we are talking about the conflict in the East. So on the one hand, we see some strong words and from the European Union, especially from the United States, and we have sanctions. Now you know that the EU announced that we are giving 3 more days for Russia to close the border. But what is also important is that we shouldn't fall into the trap of Russians, which would like to have negotiations between Kiev and terrorists. Okay? Because they would like to present it as conflict between Ukrainians, so, okay, let's negotiate, we will be intermediaries. No. There is Ukraine, there is Russia, and there could be intermediaries between Ukraine and Russia, because this is Russian war. At least the war was started by Russia. So to stop it, we need to close Russian-Ukrainian border and to close infiltration, direct infiltration from Russia. Again, all these things are needed, I believe, because you are experts, you are giving interviews, you have access to German media, to French media. Well, I'm not sure about Italian media because they are not so much interested, you know, maybe about
English language.
And English language, definitely. So all these things are needed to be explained to Western audience. And again, just one more thing, which is really symbolic. I always saying it to the Western audience. Do you know any other country in Europe where people in the center of the capital were dying under the EU flags in order to become
European.
European?
Yes.
That's what happened in Kiev. You know, for the first 2 months, even more, the conflict was not violent. But when people here were killed, started to be killed by Yanukovych, the people were dying. They were dying under Ukrainian flag and under the EU flag. So this is just, you know, symbolic, but I believe this emotional note is also helpful to understand what happened in Ukraine.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. This is very important, and we'll discuss that afterward. Maybe also ask you then.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this project, and I think that this is really great event. I have experience to cooperate with different international institutions for maybe more than 25 years. I work in the National Academy of Science before I shift to the Woodrow Wilson Center. And I should say that during this experience, I understand one very important thing. Unfortunately, definitely situation has changed, but unfortunately, Ukraine is still hidden or unknown country. It's true. Only specialists, or maybe journalists, really understand better or worse where Ukraine is, what Ukraine is, how it lives, and so on. But most of the people, even journalists who write about Ukraine, who try to understand, have very, very, I'm sorry, primitive understanding. There are a lot of reasons why it's happened. One of these reasons is that Ukraine was, during the last in a shade of Great Russian or Soviet Union, and only specialists knows how much millions of Ukrainians died on the fields of the Second World War, from 3 to 5. Nobody knows exactly how much. Only specialists knows that the best missiles in the 20th century were built in Ukraine by Ukrainian engineers, and the helicopters, first helicopters, were made by Sikorsky, who studied technologies in the Kiev Polytechnical University. Almost nobody knows that the most famous hit of American modern music, "Summertime is the Best of the Seasons," was an arrangement by Gershwin of Ukrainian folk song, which he heard in New York from the Koshitz horn in the early 20s.
Яка це пісня?
Summertime
Там-
is the best of the seasons.
Is this is
Only, yes, this is Ukrainian by origin. So, Ukraine is hidden and unknown, but Ukraine exists in every field of the world culture. And I am very glad that you try to open Ukraine for the world by such publication. In my article that you have published in this journal, I mentioned the history of Switzerland. My colleague just mentioned the history of Switzerland in comparison before. I want to say that our problem is, in the difference from Switzerland, that Switzerland has as a neighbors France and Austro-Hungarian Empire, or Austrian Empire. They are, I guess, much better neighbors than Russia before, in the time of Soviet Union, and now. So that's why we really need that our European colleagues, experts, journalists, decision makers, when they speak about future of Ukraine and make advices to us, understand this difference and try to help us to deal with this difference. Because, you know, as we have we have a war. This war is very different from the previous wars, I mean, in Europe. But from the history we know that generals always prepare to the previous war, not to the next. So now we have such a kind of a next war. And this next war, in many sense, is a war of information. The war not of missiles, the war not of guns, but a war of ideas. And in this sense, I want to stress one very important thing. During the last, maybe century, we have a kind of a contradiction in European mind. That here is Europe, here is Russia, and Soviet Union, and they have their own ideology, and they live and go their own way. But let us think that this ideology was a product of the same source. It was a broken child of European, maybe wider Christian ideology, Christian way of thinking. And from this point of view, I think not only we by ourselves, not only Russians, but also Europeans together should think how to deal with this problem and what medicine should be found to deal with this. And of course, in this context, Ukraine has its specific place. because in some sense it could be also an example for Russia, for Russian people, how to change their life after so long time of totalitarian and or authoritarian regime. So I just want to say once more that I think that such publications are very, very important. I have sent the PDF file to my colleagues to the United States, even to different very important magazines and newspapers who addressed me during the winter time to make them sure that such publication exists. Let's see on the results, if they...
Great, hopefully.
Yes. I also sent it to the China English language magazine that have addressed, the global news that have addressed me during the winter time. Because China is also became more and more important player on this ground. So I hope that this first step, this first experience of cooperation between Swiss and Ukrainian scholars will be not just fruitful for scholars, but should be also important for future decision makers. And in the last sense, for the future of the globe. Because this conflict, and I'm completely sure, is global conflict. At least at the ideological level. And I hope that it will stay at this ideological level for future, but not become hot and bloody. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Could I-
like to comment
I would like just to make follow-up comment on that. At the University of Fribourg, we have an Institute for Federalism, which is the leading institute, by the way, in Switzerland, and is very famous and often is solicited by the federal government to give analyses on different situations. And I had a long conversation with Eva Maria Welser, who is the director of the institute. And even she spontaneously said herself that there is no reason for the federalization of Ukraine. I mean, and this is their job. They are promoting and encouraging, to federalize. Switzerland had made some errors in the Balkans, of course, right, with things that were done. So I think it's important if we do something, it would be very symbolic to maybe ask her to be included. And to speak about what would be, the core identity, of course, of Switzerland is that 3 cantons came together, it was organic, and they wanted to come together. In the US, you had 13 states that came together, but to have an outside power dictate and decide that you're going to federalize is absolutely, false on all levels. So perhaps we should think about having Eva also write something, or some of the other legal scholars write something that would be worth including in a publication.
This is already a different story already. But sure, I mean, look at Switzerland. I mean, if the country would be poor, and if France and Germany would play a different role in it, then I'm not sure that some parts like Geneva would be tempted to go into the direction of France. But federalism in Switzerland is basically a successful product because everybody knows that being together you can be more successful, but as soon as 1 or 2 parts would have the impression that they are losers, that's the miracle of Switzerland, Nobody ever gets the feeling to be the loser, And you remember, we have one example of Jura, a new canton, This also was an example of a constitutional way to create a new unity inside of this federal structure, the Canton of Jura, which has been founded 25 years ago.
In the 70s, yeah.
In the 70s, But at that time you need a vote of the Swiss population, and you remember.
What is interesting is that you're talking about the period after World War II, but before that France, Germany, Italy were on different sides and still Switzerland existed, so that's also an interesting example.
Absolutely. These are already, of course, the details, but let us now maybe move to the some of the points here. I mean, we raised in our agenda, and I would like to ask, because Jaroslav and all of you, Victor and Andre, and like I say, with your statements, you raised a lot of issues, and you went beyond what we have been publishing here, because this here is only about Maidan, about the revolution. And my question is now, if we have two ideas in there, and we believe me, we can really realize that the first one is a book project, the second one is a conference. Now my question is, considering what you said already, that you're going to have elections maybe in September, then we're still not sure what's going to happen in the next couple of months with regard to Eastern Europe. What would make more sense? I mean, to start to try to make a good assessment covering many different aspects in this November conference, because our idea is to today also to fix a date for a conference in November. And that then that's the first thing. And then, should we link the book project to this conference? Could we imagine, for instance, to invite our authors here to attend this conference, to enlarge it, and then not only cover the revolution, and then also cover the international dimension, and so on and so on. It made me just thinking. We are here to think about that, John. Please, Jaroslav. Yeah.
Where would you like to have this conference?
Yeah, the idea would be how to organize that here. Yes. Here in Kiev would be the best thing, and then yeah, please, Jaroslav.
Okay, I want to, if you allow, share my experience of the that I have as a director of the Canon Kiev office. When we begin our activities, we understand that we like to speak and to talk and to exchange opinions, but after the end of the conference or seminar, it disappeared. And what we proposed to our participants during the last 10 years, when we organized the conference, so to say, ticket to the conference is a paper, which should be definitely presented and sent to the organizers before the conference. So, if you want to participate, you send a paper. If you don't want, you forget about this, and we forget about you.
Absolutely.
So, in this case, we will have so to say, the both results at once. We will have a very good conference, because people always prepare papers better than an oral presentations. And after conference...
For me, it's different. So I will have invitation without.
Your ticket is here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My oral
And from another, we will type you and present you in the internet as an oral presentation.
No.
As an
Anyway,
exception. So after that, we will have a very good presentations in paper, and in fact, after some slide editing, a collection of articles and a book. So if we divide them before the conference on these parts,
Absolutely.
it will be a very good collection of very good presentations.
That's the way. Yeah, that's the way we usually do it.
Yes.
Also. Yeah. And my question was only. My question to you is, for the moment, time being only, do you think that we can publish, or does it make sense to make a separate book out of just focusing on Maidan? Because if you agree on that, and if you invite, let's say, 4 or 5 more authors who could not attend in this project for different reasons, I don't know why. For instance, the guy from Crimea, you say that, Victor, could not participate.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. I'm asking the question to you. If you think that this is a burning thing to go, but in this issue we cannot cover the Russian thing, not too much. You have seen it. It's there, but not really. It's up to you. I mean, we have the possibility to publish a book this year, if you want, if you say that this is the very important thing, I mean, a kind of witness, you know, to see how, to show to the West how social scientists in Ukraine understand their revolution. That's one thing. But if you think that this should become a part of a bigger project involving also thinking about the future of Ukraine, Ukrainian Europe, Ukrainian Russia, this becomes, this would be a part of this conference, and then it takes another year. We will not be able to publish a book if it's based on the November conference. If after November, let's say November, we present 30 papers, and maybe we plan 2 books. These books will not be ready before end of 2015. This is just realistic. You understand? If more. You understand that?
Yeah.
My question is about what's your sense of how you say, urgency? Yes? Urgency. If you say that, because this is just a nice thing here, but this is just, I consider that as a draft version of something more solid, more scientific. I mean, more scientific in a sense because we invited you to publish 3 pages, but in a real book, we invite you to publish 15 pages based on evidence, based on empirical material, or another thing, okay? That's my question to you here. And if we can agree today, on that, it would be wonderful, because this gives us then, because we have the means to finance the book at the conference, and then we also would like also to discuss the last point is what projects we could realize in the next 2 years here, because we have also now we are also discussing with some state agencies, State Secretary of Science and Education would be willing to finance 1 or 2 big scientific projects in Ukraine on the transformation from in 2015. You know, so we could also think that this is not fiction. This is new reality, so to say. Yeah? You see the point, okay?
Yeah. So, to my mind, if you ask me, I am completely agree with the last proposal, that this is urgently to publish some very good explanation what is happening in Ukraine, including our relationship with Russia. So, as we think about this publication as a draft, I think that to the end of the year, it should be very good to prepare, so to say, the more solid publication.
Yeah. So you think it would be possible to invite these authors and maybe extend it, or to maybe also include some additional dimensions, the Russian one?
By the end of the year?
I mean, in the next 6 months, in the next 5-6
In
months.
the next 6 months to write a new article about...
Or just to develop the ideas already, I mean. Yeah?
Actually, Yaroslav suggested a good idea, but maybe we should think about some section, you know, or just
sections, yes.
Yeah, for future structuring book. I mean, just to think about authors who would be able to cover different aspects. For example, we try to do in this issue, but in a way we may engage some maybe economists, linguists, or some people from judicial science. I mean, some lawyers. I mean, who could be able to write in more or less understandable language, and just to cover maybe different aspects of Ukrainian post-revolutionary transformation.
Yeah.
You know,
But the problem is that
cultural aspect,
Yeah.
socio-economic aspect, geopolitical aspect.
I just feel
stuff like that. Yeah.
But this goes already now. I just fear that this is already going beyond. I mean, if you think to extend the whole thing, then it takes much more time again, you know. So my question is, would it make sense to focus rather on the revolution only, or but because if you want to include also this economic aspects, the Russian aspect, then I fear that this will take more time, no, because it's more complicated, no?
But what if we were to structure it in this way? thinking of doing a comprehensive, we're talking now about comprehensive study.